and welcome to video 6 on our series on ggplot2 for data visualization. Today we're going to talk about the use of stats or statistical functions. So some of the geoms that we've been talking about, the geometric objects, they use some sort of intermediate result. So they compute something first and then they plot that intermediate result. For instance, the bar chart uses the statistical function count. So it counts things and then plots the results. Similarly, histograms, frequency polygons, bin your data, put it in bins, and then count the number of rows that fall into each bin and then plot that. Smoothers, you've seen geom smooth, fits a model to the data and then plots the predictions. Similarly, box plots uses a statistical summary of the data and then plots the results. Now the term stat is short for statistical transformation, and that's the way that the intermediate values are calculated. Okay, so most stats have a default geom and most geoms have a default stat. So to see this, let's look at geom bar. So we'll do the help on geom bar. And in here it tells us it uses stat count by default. So it counts the number of cases at each X position, whereas geom column uses the identity and leaves the data as it is. So let's see what geom bar does. I've got a data set that's built in called diamonds, and if I look at the diamonds data set and map X to be the cut of the diamond, this will give me a bar chart of the various X values, the count of the various cuts that I have. Let me see if I can get that all on the page for you. There we go. Now it's all in the window. So you can see that I have the highest count of the ideal cut. So what it has done is it has looked at the diamonds data set and organized it by the cut and counted the number of observations in each one. So I could have instead done the same thing using stat count, which is the default statistic for this, for geom bar. Use stat count instead of geom bar, and I should get exactly the same result. So they are pretty much interchangeable. So now let's suppose I don't really want it to do that. I've got, let's say, a tibble, and we'll call this one demo, where I already have the values that I want to do a bar chart from. So I want to just plot these in a bar chart. Okay, so I am going to then overwrite the default stat. So I'll tell it geom bar, and the Y is going to be the frequency. I tell it which column to take the height from, but I tell it use the identity stat. Don't use the stat count default stat. So use a different stat, and so here I can get the bar chart. Now, if I wanted to see a proportion instead, so let's go back to my diamonds data set. I can do Y is the proportion, and I have to tell it that I want one group. So this would give me now proportions instead of absolute numbers. In your materials, I give you the link to the ggplot2 cheat sheet. So I suggest you take a look at that and see the list of the different stats you can use. To see what a particular one does, you'll use the question mark for the help. So you could do stat bin to see what that does. Okay. And eventually this will take us to the help file. Okay, so I can see here's stat bin. Now let's see, here's one that's going to use stat summary. So I've said use the summary function, and you're going to plot the minimum to be the minimum value, the line up to the maximum to be the maximum value, and the dot will be at the median. Okay, so this shows how these are spread apart. Now, you are going to try to work the last exercise, which is part of your homework, exercise 7, and play around with the geoms and the stats, and then include that in your assignment that you upload. And come back and we'll do video 7.